Hello, and welcome back to What's Your Favorite Scary Story? I hope you all enjoyed my first episode. I certainly enjoyed making it. I've got some really interesting stuff for you in this episode, but I do still need ideas from you guys. Like I mentioned last time, this podcast is all about what you want to hear. It can be anything from the paranormal to urban legends and even cryptids. I want to cover all things spooky. This is a way for you guys to be involved with the podcast, especially if you have any personal experiences with your suggestion. Feel free to include those in your email and I'll include it in the episode. So just a reminder, you can send your emails to whatsyourfavoritescarystory@gmail.com. Now let's get talking about ghosts. So this episode's topic was chosen by my mom, Diane. She chose this topic because she actually lives in the town where it takes place. It is going to focus on 3 separate houses, and that is because all of those houses were right in the middle of the Civil War. These houses reside in Franklin, Tennessee, which is just a normal suburban town today. I will be covering each of these houses individually. So the first house is called the Carnton Plantation. The home on this plantation was built in 1826 and owned by the mayor of Nashville, Randall McGavick. It was built on limestone, which is actually said to be a huge conductor for spiritual energy. It was a federal-style, red brick, 11-room home. Now, unfortunately, since this was a southern plantation in the early 1800s, there were up to 28 people who were enslaved there at a time. These were the people who built McGavick's home, as well as another house on the property, and were responsible for the farming operation. They worked the fields and tended to the large amount of livestock. On November 30th, 1864, at 4 p.m., the Battle of Franklin began. It would come to be one of the bloodiest battles of the Civil War. It lasted 5 hours and led to 9,500 soldiers being killed, wounded, captured, or counted as missing. The Carnton Plantation served as the largest field hospital in the area. There are bloodstains on the floorboards to this day. 2 acres of land were designated as a final burial place for almost 1,500 Confederate soldiers. The McGavicks owned the property until Susie Lee, a widow of one of the McGavick family members, sold it in 1911. In 1977, the Carnton Plantation was restored and listed on the National Register of Historic Places and donated to the Carnton Association. Many items were preserved and kept in the home, including a cemetery book containing the locations of the final resting places of nearly 1,500 soldiers that are buried on the property. The property is open today for tours, and there are definitely some spirits that reside there. There has been a young woman seen in the kitchen sweeping the floors. It is rumored that she was murdered prior to the war out of revenge by a man that tried to court her, whom she rejected. There is also a spirit of another woman who is seen mostly in October floating across the back porch. On the front porch, people have reported seeing a Confederate general pacing back and forth. The cook who worked for the family is often seen floating around the kitchen and making noises in there as if she is continuing her work in the afterlife. Except all that is seen of her is her floating head. The most reported spirit is a mischievous one of a murdered young girl. She is known to play tricks on people and move objects around. One day, when the home's curator was alone in the house, she heard some strange noises coming from the enclosed back porch. When she went to go see what it was, she found 2 panes of glass taken down from a shelf and placed against the back door. There have been a few more spirits reported, including a lady in white, a young girl with brown hair, and Native American spirits, who have been seen in the bedrooms, back porch, and the grounds surrounding the home. Now, this story is from a visitor who had an ancestor fight in the Battle of Franklin. He is referenced as Mr. P. Now, Mr. P came to pay the Carnton mansion a visit, but he had arrived shortly after it had closed. He decided to take a walk around the home and took a path that led to the back porch. As he was standing there, looking at the mansion, Near the porch, he saw the silhouette of a man that he thought was about to get on a horse. But then suddenly, the horse vanished. Mr. P saw another man standing on the porch and asked him what had happened to the horse. The man had explained that the horse was shot from under the other soldier, just like his horse had been earlier. Both of these men and the horse that Mr. P had seen and spoken to were indeed spirits, and reportedly have been seen galloping into the horizon by multiple other guests. Now, although my mom does live in Franklin, she doesn't have any personal stories from this place, but she does have some stories. So here are 2 quick quotes from her. So my friend said her ex-husband Mike worked for a security camera company, and they installed a security camera with an alarm at the Carnton House, a historical museum from the Civil War. The museum people called the company up and said the alarm would go off just like a break-in every night. They had the police come out to check, but never found any evidence of a break-in. Finally, after this happened several evenings in a row, the people at the museum asked Mike and a fellow employee to stay in the evening to see and check if there was something tripping the security system. So they did and said everything was wired correctly, and the system went off again while they were there. They did not see anyone or anything and decided that the Carton House couldn't have their system. It scared them to death. Wow, okay, so she has one more little story. Here is another one my friend told me tonight. She had a client who told her that she went to the Carnton House at night and parked by the cemetery. When they looked up towards the house that was a few feet away, they saw a woman looking back at them from the house. No one lives in the house, no one else was there, and it scared them, so they left. And that was the story of the Carnton Plantation. The next house we are going to talk about is the Carter House. In 1830, Fountain Branch Carter built a 1.5-story brick house just south of downtown Franklin for his small family. His small family eventually turned into a family of 14. Carter had a successful business in town, but the new home he had built allowed him to pursue farming. In just 20 years, the property grew from 19 acres to 288. Carter had also added a cot engine, extremely increasing the farm's value and production. Unfortunately, just as it had done for the Carnton Plantation, the Battle of Franklin brought the success of the Carter House to a screeching halt. In the early morning of November 30th, 1864, a Federal brigade general woke the Carter family, took possession of their home, and made their parlor his headquarters. As the battle began, the Carter family, several of their enslaved, and a neighboring family took refuge in the north room of the basement. One of the Carter sons, Todd, was actually enlisted and serving as an aide to a Confederate general. Although he was just an aide, he still joined the fight and became gravely wounded. His family did get to go see him, but he succumbed to his injuries 2 days later. Just like the Carnton Plantation, the Carter House was also used as a hospital following the battle. After the war, the Carter family did try to revive their farm and livelihood, but they were never able to make it as profitable as it was prior to the war. They even had the reminder of approximately 1,000 bullet holes in one of the walls of their farm office, which can still be seen today. The house and land were sold by the oldest Carter son in 1896, and then the state of Tennessee purchased it in 1951. It was open to the public just a short 2 years later. Now, of course, this place has got some ghosts too. The ones that are always recognized are that of Todd and one of his sisters, Annie. They appear as their childhood selves and are known to run around the house and tug on people's clothing. People have also reported other random spirits, unexplained voices, nausea, extreme feelings of dread, and even seeing a statue jumping in the air. I do have a story for you that just absolutely gives me the chills. A man, we'll call him Josh, went to the Carter House with some friends on Halloween night, looking for a little scare. When they pulled up the driveway, they saw a bonfire and 3 people dressed in period time clothing. These people informed the group of friends that they worked for the Carter house and that although they give tours during the day, the place was closed at night and they were just there to keep an eye on things since they knew there would be people trying to come there for Halloween. They said the employees were very friendly and even gave them a tour of the outside of the house. They then suggested that they drive down to the Carnton plantation for some more scares. They directed the friends where to go and sent them on their way. The group drove back down the driveway, but they already forgot which way they needed to turn. So they pulled up the driveway again, and when they got back to the house, there was nothing. No bonfire, no people, no sign of life whatsoever. I still can't wrap my head around that one. So we have one last house left to cover, and that is the Lotz house. It was built in 1858 by a German immigrant named Albert Lotz. He actually built this house on 5 acres of land that he purchased from Fountain Branch Carter. Lotz was a carpenter and a piano maker, and his home was by far the most artistic and ornate of the three. Unfortunately, since it was on the Carter property, it was right in the middle of the battle. Since their house was made of wood, the Lotz family rushed over to the Carter home and took refuge with them in their basement. They were actually the neighbors I mentioned when I was telling the story of the Carter house. Once the battle was over, the Lotz family discovered that their home had been significantly damaged. A cannonball had even gone through their roof and crashed all the way to the first floor. Lotz did rebuild, but only a few years later, his family was forced to flee. Apparently, he had built a piano with an inscription on it that the KKK interpreted as disrespectful to the Confederacy. Lotz became aware of this and had learned of their plans to tar and feather him in his own front yard. He immediately sold his house and took his family to California. Over time, the house was used for a number of businesses and was even turned into apartments at one time. In 1991, the house was up for sale and actually had plans to be turned into a Mexican restaurant. But a man by the name of J.T. Thompson heard of these plans and stepped in and purchased the home himself. He then turned the home into a museum to honor the Lotz family and their story. Now, just because the Lotz house was less involved in the battle, that doesn't mean it's ghost-free. The home has actually been deemed the second most terrifying place in America by the Travel Channel, and was in their shows Haunted Live and The Most Terrifying Places in America. There are only a couple distinct ghosts that reside at the Lotz house. One is a woman crying out for a loved one, and the other is a little girl staring out a window. But that doesn't mean that that's all the activity that goes on there. Other types of activity reported is hearing drums coming from outside the home and inside the home, screams of soldiers, unexplained shadows, and apparitions of men in Civil War garb. A staff member was once alone in the museum. When she passed by a staircase, she saw a woman at the top of the stairs. The woman yelled, "Where is Anne?" Before the employee could respond, the woman vanished into thin air. What makes this story even creepier is that a visitor has had that exact same experience. These houses have seen so much tragedy and bloodshed, and it's no surprise that the misfortunes of their past seem to have made their way into present day. Not having been to any of them myself, I can't say for sure whether or not I know they're haunted, but I could definitely believe it. And those, ladies and gentlemen, were the Civil War houses of Franklin, Tennessee. So I'm already having a blast starting to research these stories, and I really hope you guys are having a good time listening to them. But I do still need more ideas. So please don't be shy. Send in an email of something you think others would enjoy hearing about. And you can send more than one idea. I'll literally take any and all suggestions. You can send them to whatsyourfavoritescarystory@gmail.com. And that does remind me, I do want to mention, for anyone that hasn't listened to the first episode, that I do also have an Instagram for the show where you can stay up to date on everything. Again, you can find that at What's Your Favorite Scary Story. All right, I think that is all, and I will talk to you on the next episode. Stay spooky!